Hey, what's up, YouTube? Is it better to do wholesaling face to face or over the phone? Let's find out. All right, what's up? So my name is Graylan Stewart. I'm a virtual wholesaler. We wholesale nationwide. And my channel is all about telling you the truths and the ins and outs of wholesaling, what works for my business personally, and just telling you how it really is out there. So today's video is going to be about wholesaling in general, but specifically, is it better to do face-to-face or is it better to do over the phone, more virtual model? So I'm gonna cover some pros and cons, and you can be the judge, because one way or the other is not right or wrong, and one way is better than the other for some people, and vice versa for others. So let's just get into it. This is just my 2 cents on the whole model of wholesaling in general, and you can just determine on what you think yourself. So anyway, so I'm going to go over pros and cons. Hopefully you can see this. I know the angle is kind of terrible, but hopefully you can see the entire screen up there. But face-to-face, pros and cons, over the phone, pros and cons, okay? And I do have some notes here, so if you see me glancing over, bear with me. Just want to make sure I get it all on there. So one pro, obviously, when you're face-to-face, it's definitely more personal. So obviously, anything you do that you can do face-to-face is always better. That's just the way it is. It's definitely more personal, but not only that, it allows you to read people's body language, which is huge in sales. Obviously, when you're talking to someone and you're having the whole sales conversation, in this case, we're talking about their house and potentially selling it to us, their body language a lot of times can tell the full story, because you can really see if they're more motivated or less motivated by the way they kind of act and move and feel, the way they talk and feel and that kind of thing. So body language is always key when you're face to face. So that is a huge pro when you're doing that. Another big one is there's no distractions. So obviously, if they're not distracted, that's a huge benefit, because you don't have all those outside influences and everything's, their mind is elsewhere because, you're not face to face. So face to face is huge without having distractions. So you get their undivided attention. Because when you're there with them, obviously they're looking at you, they're talking to you, and you're just talking about the entire house and the process and that kind of thing, all in person, which is huge. Another one is you can get the contract signed in person. So contract in person is also huge. It's all about when you finish the conversation, you're asking for the sale, and then you literally can turn the contract around and just say sign here. That is huge when you're face to face. Like I said, you're able to just communicate a little bit better, a little bit easier, because you're looking at them eye to eye, and you can ask for the sale on the spot and get it right then while you're there. Another part that's huge is you can actually view the house yourself, but not only that, get all the pictures and videos that you need. So that's huge, because a lot of times when we're doing these things over the phone, it's harder to really gauge on what the house looks like. You're just banking on the seller kind of telling you all the information. So as opposed to face to face, you can actually see the property in person, make sure there's no foundation issues. You're looking at it with your own eyes. You can take all the pictures you need and want, take the videos that you need and want. So it's definitely a lot simpler process in that respect. Okay. So let's see, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pros on that. So let's go over some of the cons. One of the cons, obviously, is you have to be local. So that could be a pro also. I'm going to put that over here too. you're local, because that is a pro. So they actually know that you're from their same city. Typically, if you're showing up at their house and you know the area and you're a legitimate person that's ready to buy their house because you're at their house right then. But the downfall is you have to be local to do face to face, obviously. So that's a pro and a con actually. So, but another con is you have to have an appointment. So you physically need an appointment when you're doing face to face. So you're scheduling that with the customer or with the seller and making sure they're there, kind of getting all that lined out to where you can actually be there in person to talk to them and give them your whole pitch and what you can do for them to help solve their problem. Another con is you can't do as many deals. So what I mean by that is it takes you time. By the time you schedule that appointment, you drive to that appointment. So it takes you probably 30 minutes in most cases. And then you're there for an hour, maybe even an hour and a half, depending on how long you talk to the customer. And then you got to drive back home. So you're looking at maybe 3 hours probably. So really in a full day, if you've got an acquisition person or if you're doing it yourself, you might be able to see 3 people in one day, but probably 2. So that's a huge con, because you can only see 2 people. So you can only have 2 appointments. Okay. The biggest one though, in my opinion, is it's not really scalable. It's not scalable because you're only one person. So you can scale it, but you need a lot more people. So if you had 2 or 3 or 4 acquisition managers going out there doing the thing, obviously you're giving up more profits because you got more people. So your overhead is a lot higher. But in general, it's just not as scalable because typically you're doing these kind of things on your own or with just a handful of people. So you can't get to as many people. Okay. So those are kind of my pros and cons of face-to-face. Obviously, I do think hands down face-to-face is always better as far as getting the contract. It's definitely a lot easier. But we're going to go over, pros and cons of doing it over the phone and why I think that model is actually a little bit better, even though you have a better chance of getting the deal face-to-face. So let's get into those. So pros for over the phone. The first one I got on here is it's 100% virtual. Obviously, that's huge because you're virtual. You don't have to actually go to their house and talk to them and waste 2 to 3 hours, on one appointment. So 100% virtual. Also, you can reach a whole lot more people in one day. So that's a given. If you can reach more people, then you can get more sales. If you get more sales, then you make more money. So obviously reaching more people is a big pro. So you can see that would be the case. Another thing is you can go to any market. Obviously, if you live in a small town, wholesaling is not as popular because there's not as many buyers. So virtual, going over the phone allows you to go anywhere in the nation. So you're not limited to your backyard. You're just limited to your imagination. So that's a huge one. Another one is there's no fear from, the virus that's out there right now. And that's not a huge deal depending on where you live. Like in the Midwest, it's probably not that big a deal. But if you want to wholesale, somewhere on the West Coast or the Northeast or something like that, it's a lot more prevalent where people are a little bit more scared of it and more leery of you coming into their house and potentially infecting them and that kind of thing. So it's harder to go face to face in that respect. But another one I got on here is the best one is it's scalable. Obviously, when you're virtual wholesaling, it's super scalable. All you need is systems and processes. Then you can go to any market you want to in the entire nation. So, like I said, you're virtual in 100% in every way, and go anywhere you want. Wherever you want to go to do deals, that's where you can do deals. So that's the coolest part about it. It's completely scalable as long as you have the systems and process and the people in place to make all that happen. The sky's the limit, because I definitely know at least a dozen companies out there doing $1 million or so per month, not just per year, but per month. So none of those companies do it face to face, because it's not possible doing those type of numbers. So it's very scalable doing it that way. But some of the cons are, you do need boots on the ground because you're not getting pictures yourself. Hopefully you can read that. Need boots on the ground. It's a little sloppy, but you get the gist. So obviously you have to have boots on the ground if you're virtual. Even when I was doing virtual wholesaling locally, I still had boots on the ground. I didn't go to a house, even though it might be 15 minutes down the road. It's not scalable, so I didn't do it. I just chose to be virtual from the get-go, even in my own backyard. So another part is, another con is it's less personal. So obviously less personal means you can't read their body language. You can't kind of get a feel for them when you're in there, as opposed to face to face. So it is a con. It's a little less personal when you're kind of relying on phone talking and that kind of thing. And that's just the way it is, in the virtual model. So that's a con too. You just have to be really good on the phone. Because I do know some people, like one acquisition manager that I hired that was a mistake. He was super personal, really good face-to-face, in front of somebody. He can get any kind of deal when you're in person and face-to-face. But the phone, he hated the phone because, he couldn't get a feel for them. He couldn't read their body language, all those different things. So it's definitely a lot less personal. So you really got to hone your skills your phone skills, to be able to pull that off. So since I said that, the last one is, it is harder to master. And when I say harder to master, that's just it. It's harder to master because you do have to have more systems, that kind of thing in place, and you have to hone your skills on the phone. Everything about it is probably a little bit harder because there's just extra steps that you have to take because you are virtual. But man, if you can get those down, it's definitely, it pays off, because I think it's a better model overall if you're trying to scale. Now, if you're just trying to do a couple of deals a month and make a good living for your family, that's great. I think face-to-face is the way to go, hands down. But if you're really trying to make it a business to where you're scaling and doing bigger numbers every month or every quarter or every year, then the only way to do that is virtual, over the phone. So you got to get good on the phones. So anyway, hopefully you can see all of those, see the pros and cons. You can snapshot that if you want to. I'll get out of the way. But if hopefully it makes sense. Obviously face to face is, like I said, it's definitely a better model if you have the time and if you're local and you can do that kind of thing. But if you're really wanting to do some serious numbers and really grow your business, you have to get on board with a virtual model. That's just the way it is. So anybody that's doing any big numbers, they're virtual. They're 100% virtual, and that's just the way it is. You'll find some people out there doing $1 million a year that are face to face, but anybody doing $1 million a month, even several hundred a month, they're 100% virtual. So anyways, hopefully this gave you some value. This is just kind of my 2 cents, because I have done a little bit of both. Because you don't know my full story, but I have lived in 2 different states for 8 years, so I was forced to do virtual from the get-go. But when I was in the certain areas, then I would go face to face in those time periods. But I always did better when I wasn't in the city, because you could get a lot more done. You can talk to more people, make more offers, follow up with people more easier, because it's all digital. So anyways, hopefully you got value in this. If you stuck around this long, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate you subscribing to get notified of any of our new videos. We do upload a couple times a week. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.